Lord, I pray for the boy man down in Vietnam. Will you please forgive me for my sins?
Secretary McNamara, line O.
My fellow Americans.
President, we just had word by telephone from Admiral Sharp that the destroyer is under torpedo attack.
It is my duty to the American people.
Now, where are these torpedoes coming from? Well, we don't know. Presumably from these unidentified craft that I mentioned to you a moment ago.
Today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply. The initial attack on the destroyer Maddox on the Gulf of Tonkin. And the Congress was with me before that resolution went up. Every single man in that room recommended it and advocated it. Casualties started coming in. Why, there's certain folks started looking for the cellar.
But in the end, it was just one more plan that didn't work.
The war was probably fought for all the wrong reasons to start with, so there's no justification for it.
When I got back to the United States and I found out that I really wasn't welcome in society.
If we're going to fight a war, by God, fight it.
We were just told us, rip up your pictures, you're going to die here.
Someone comes to the door with a telegram, or did back then, and your life was destroyed.
Scared that someday he's going to get killed.
My brother died believing, though, that he was keeping us safe, that he was, protecting us. And the men that served over there, they believed the same thing.
Nobody talks, so you start thinking.
Everybody else was 17 and 18 years old.
You can't send anybody into combat. And I don't care what they tell you. You get PTSD.
Danger, fear.
Thank you. Let me shake your hand, appreciate it, and walk off. Actually give a damn about them, because obviously they gave a damn about us.
It took me several years to be able to even approach the wall. I would sit in the trees on a bench up above the wall, and I could look at it at a distance. But the reality of those names were very hard for me to finally face. And when I did, I was frozen in my tracks for a long time, with the tears streaming down my face. Because by then I knew every name. I knew their mother and father. I knew what their dreams were. That's the burden of memory.
It's been 50 years since the first major battle between U.S. forces and the North Vietnamese, the Battle of Ia Drang Valley. Over the next 10 years or so, there were many battles, nearly 60,000 American lives lost, their names etched forever on the Vietnam Memorial Wall here in Washington, D.C. To say it was an unpopular war is an understatement. KWTX produced this special report to allow Vietnam veterans a chance to set the record straight, to tell in their own words the stories of the great sacrifices of the American soldiers. We can't forget Vietnam. What you're about to see and hear is our way of making sure we don't.
I've heard several names for this war. What do you call this war?
This war? I call it hell.
There seems little doubt now that U.S. forces in Vietnam will be fighting as independent combat units.
I call it a clusterfuck. I thought it was a mess.
The Nam. That's all you have to call it. Anyone that was ever there, all you have to say was the Nam. You're all brothers, anybody that was there.
You went out daily in what we called hunter-killer teams or pink teams, whatever you wanted to call them.
The loach would go down and fly over the area that he was going to look at and keep his speed up till he got confident, and then he would go lower and slower, and finally they'd end up hovering over the trees. Those guys were crazy, just slap crazy.
And we partied hard at night, and then we flew 16 hours a day. And then you'd work on shot-up helicopters all night and sleep 2 hours and crawl on a helicopter and fly for 16 hours a day. And yeah, we were a bunch of kids and we didn't have a whole lot of sense and we didn't have a whole lot of training, but we were proud of what we did.
And that's the way the fights got started. They literally would start building forces onto that enemy force that had shot at or shot down the scout bird.
And all your buddies are sitting out there and they're giving, and they know you're going. There is no way that you can quit. You want to quit? I don't want to go on this mission. I don't want to do this. You know, I don't want to get on that aircraft. I don't want to do this again. And here's your buddy saying, and there is no way in front of them that you can quit.
Took his weapon up in the air and said, "Sir, though I walk the valley of death, I fear no evil." But he turned it around because I am the meanest, you know, MF. And to me, there is no equal. And of course, it stirred all the whole company up, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then you would run, you know, from there you would run down to the landing zone, you know, board your shoppers.
Hotel 47, we're going to head back towards 2 bits. 49 will stay on station.
Freedom isn't a God-given right, it's a man-given right, and men try to take it away. And unless somebody's willing to die for it, you're not going to have it.
We brought some replacements, and they said, "Bullshit, that's all a bunch of bullshit, what you're saying." I said, "Man, what do you think you're in training for in Okinawa for? This ain't no joke over here." And then they look out the C-47 and look at there's your base right there. They said, that's the base? And they say, what a desolate motherfucker that is, you know? So yeah, that's exactly what I said when I came here. Now you got your first lesson.
American soldiers hiking their way through the sweaty jungles of South Vietnam, searching for an elusive enemy.
After you've killed your first person, you'll never be the same. You'll never.
I see every face. And mostly the thing is the surprise. Because I don't care who you are, just before you get shot, you're surprised. And your eyes get big and you can't look at them as human.
You'll never sleep again. You will never trust again. The person you trust least of all will be yourself.
Maybe that's why we're as cold as we are. You have to be cold. You have to lose everything that makes you human. And I don't think you ever really get it back.
All of a sudden, we're going to Happy Valley. And of course, the reason they call it Happy Valley was because, you know, wasn't too happy at all, you know. And that kind of, it's hard to talk about.
What we know is that 65% of the casualties are suffered in the first 3 months of the tour. The learning curve in combat is ferocious. And you know, if you can get past those first 3 months, your chances of surviving that tour are infinitely greater. But the greenhorns, they die like flies.
Company commander said that, look at your guy on the right, look at your guy on the left, one of you's not coming back, you know.
Guy gets shot. He's sitting there, but it's not a real bad bullet wound, you know. I got shot right here. But you get a guy gets shot like right here, and it goes right through, and he's gone. He's not gonna be back, and everybody's laughing, said, man, it's your $1 million hole, man, $1 million hole, you're going home. He says, yeah. And then you find out the next day he died from infections. They couldn't save him.
My best buddy got shot in his main artery right here between his legs, and I watched him die. But I talked to him until he was gone. I told him, I said, you're not gonna die. He said, yeah, I'm gonna die. I said, no, you're not gonna die. You have to continuously talk to people. You can't just let them know that they're gonna die. You gotta give them some hope. But I knew he was because I was holding pressure on his artery and blood was just gushing out. And that bothered me for a long time, and it still bothers me today. Sometimes when I be sitting home, I think about this because he was like a brother to me. And I was losing him. And he had planned a big wedding. I had seen pictures of his wife-to-be, and it was kind of hard because I had to sit down and write a letter to this lady, you know, explaining to her what had happened.
They didn't bother to tell you, you know, most of the stuff we did was pretty dangerous. Didn't have a high survival rate. And it didn't have anything to do with whether you were good at it or bad at it. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's it.
In the middle of the worst day of my life, when people were dying all around me, I had been walking around taking pictures, and I fell to one knee behind a little bush, and I was surveying the open ground, and suddenly out of the corner of my eye I caught movement, and a guy jumped out of the mortar pit, and he zigzagged across that corner of the clearing, bullets kicking up dirt behind him, and he dove under that bush. And he looked up, and all I could see were white eyeballs under a steel helmet. And he said, Joe Galloway, don't you know me, man? It's Vince Cantu from Refugio. Vince and I had gone to school together from first grade to 12th, graduated together in 1959, and that was the last time I saw him until that day. And he said, Joe, you gotta get down and stay down, man. I'm watching you walking around over here like a tourist with that camera. You're gonna get killed. They're killing people all around you.
We got hit with 30,000 North Vietnamese soldiers, 3 divisions.
Then there was September 3rd in Dong Ha. We got hit by, I think it was 800 rounds of 152 Russian artillery. And it blew up the whole ammo dump.
We'd gone without any sleep, food, or water. You know, I mean, we didn't know if we were going to die. You know, when I went to Vietnam, I was an agnostic. But, you know, God has a way of allowing certain situations to happen in one's life. You know, if you've heard the adage that there's no atheists in foxholes, battlefield conversions, I am one of those.
I was drunker than a skunk. I was underneath my cot, and they come in and dragged me out of there. Took me in the hole.
Second day of that 2.5-day battle when it became obvious to me it was going to be extremely difficult to get out of there alive, you start praying.
I was down the hall. I put my head between my legs and prayed to Jesus.
Say, God, if you get me out of here alive, I will come back and make a profession of faith.
Either take my life or with the end is because it was just too bad. And then all of a sudden he gave me the strength and I felt like 100% better. I wasn't afraid of nothing anymore.
And I'm looking out, and an Air Force A-1E Sky Raider fighter plane flew beneath us, streaming 100 feet of fire and smoke behind it. And it went into the jungle. And I had the headphones on and they're screaming, anybody see us shoot? Did anyone see us shoot? And I clicked it and I said, no shoot, no shoot. He went in with the bird. And he's still there in the jungle.
American soldiers hiking their way through the sweaty jungles of South Vietnam, searching for an elusive enemy.
Wasted was one of the words that came out of Vietnam. The 60s and the 70s was wasted. Wasted was not a word to say that you were smoking dope and high. Wasted was from going in, taking a piece of land, having our young soldiers killed, and then picking up and leaving and let the enemy come back in and take it over. We were wasted.
But when we actually got into a battle and take a hill or take a creek or take a bridge or take a village, we would take it, we would just kill everybody who just needed to be killed, and we would lose the ones that we got killed on our side. And we would say, mission accomplished. And the next thing out of the commander's mouth would be, mission accomplished. Next mission might be 40 kilometers away, and you get up and you leave. Everybody that's dead is still dead on both sides. All the bullets spent are still gone. All the time and effort is still gone. And you get up and you left it. You didn't secure it. You didn't leave any amount of people to secure it as real estate that you now own. You went and bought another piece of real estate with blood and guts of somebody else.
Ashaw Valley, Quezon Plains, Quang Tree, all those up in the I-Corps. How many times did we fly over the same bit of territory and then get through and pick up and leave? That's crazy. That's crazy.
Don't change the rules all the time so that the folks that are there facing enemies are literally hobbled from doing their duty to try to save their own lives and to gain ground or whatever the mission happens to be.
We're sitting ducks, period. Period. They wouldn't let us do our job. We couldn't say, I was at the grunt unit all the time and I was on perimeter all the time. I couldn't stand sitting there in the base. I had to be out on perimeter. Had to be someplace where I could defend myself or defend somebody. And I couldn't fire a round unless I got 7 incoming. It was so bad that I had to get up and shoot my own bunker before I could shoot somebody. We just got it every day. It was constant, constant, constant.
We just had a message from Westmoreland. Then he goes on to say, there's been a limited war with limited objectives, fought with limited means, and programmed for the utilization of limited resources.
That's another thing that happens in these, quote, political wars that I think is not often enough talked about. We restrain our people. Our enemies know that. They do bolder and bolder things, and they wrap themselves in their own women and children. I mean, it happens. And so innocents are going to be killed, and when the fight finally happens, we're going to end up getting a black eye over it in many cases. And we're going to end up losing some of our own people unnecessarily, in my view.
Every time I see a politician stand up and vote for war, I want to take him by his stack and swivel and carry him to the VA hospital and walk him through the wards. I want to take him to Walter Reed Army Hospital and walk him through the wards there like I've done. And let him shake the hands of 800 amputees in the orthopedic ward. How can you know this and vote in favor of war? Those who have seen war hate war. They draw cartoons and always it seems it's the generals who want to go to war. No, they grew up going to war. They know better. It's the politicians.
Just because their generals got a good strategy doesn't mean they're going to allow them to use it. They have their own agenda. Who knows what that is?
If this country would go to war and fight it like war, instead of going over there and fighting like pansy-ass politicians, we would win war and we would be out of war a hell of a lot sooner than we are now. If we would go to win and not go to just screw around and who's ever in office at this time, we would certainly win a lot more wars.
I guess we're the only army in the world that is held back by our government. Every other government, they just let them go.
It's always the politicians. And if we were to, just to have a law or a constitutional amendment that anyone who votes in favor of war should be the first to go, along with his children and his grandchildren, we wouldn't have any more wars. These guys vote to send other people's kids to war, not their own. Their own don't go. And it's easy to be someone who beats the drums of war if you ain't going.
Stop firing! Stop firing! Can you hear me? Over.
This is exactly the way it's been at Firebase Jerry for the last 24 hours.
The truth is that those who keep talking about surgical strikes and we're going to do this and minimize casualties, well, we're going to war with all the might of the U.S. military. I mean, that is absolutely insane. It's inane and it's dishonest. There is collateral damage. I mean, the casualties of war, unfortunately, are sometimes, certainly happened to a couple of my people, several others were wounded by friendly fire. Well, no fire is friendly, but when you're in wars, these kinds of things are going on, accidents will happen, friendly fire incidents will happen, and babies will be killed.
Then you'd have, at night, you send out your LPs, your listening posts. They would sit out at night on the listening post, watch. You set up your claymore mines, your booby traps, set all those up.
On October 17, 1970, I blew up a child, and I get up every night with that child. The child, I had to carry that child. And we took a donation in Vietnam, $40 is a lot of money. We took up a donation to bury that child, and we got it $40. And $40 is what buried that child. But the child was killed by my mechanical ambush. I didn't sit there and pull the trigger, I didn't sit there. I set the tripwire and I set the mechanical ambush up, but the child tripped the wire and the child was killed. I get up and I feel him and I hear his mother every night. So I can't even think of what I would feel like if one of my grandchildren or if one of my sons had been killed that way.
We'd sweep a bill and we'd find spider traps and stuff like that. And we'd find all kinds of trip grenades and every kind of booby trap you could think of. And we're just going in there trying to help the people. So what's that all about, you know? And then you got all these other kids. Then I had a lot of kids that were trying to learn things, and then the communists come along and kill them. And what do you do?
And you bond with everybody. I mean, I remember there was an Anglo-American, white American, and a Mexican American, and African American, eating out of the same sea ration can. Take a spoon, he'd take a spoon, take a spoon. There's no difference there. There's no difference there. Taking care of each other, got to.
It's a funny feeling. And everybody around you, you're with 4 guys that you trust your life to. Not one of them will desert you no matter what.
Everybody had everybody's back. That's the rule of thumb. I got your back, you got my back. That's all there is, And you don't worry about it. You just do what you got to do, and somebody's got your back.
We were young, poor troops that we went and we did our job because we believed our country.
And the fighting of the young men there, how hard they worked, how they cared about one another, that's a great story. The country should be proud of it. Shouldn't be proud of conducting the war from a political standpoint. Should be proud of the soldiers that served there.
The pain of remembering. They're always locked at the age of 19 in our memory. They never grow any older. As we grow older, we understand what they gave up now. That they would never fall in love, marry a good woman, see their kids grow up. The longer we live, the more we know what they gave up.
This is the real McCoy. Wake up quick. You're gonna smell dead bodies from now on. You're gonna see, I used to volunteer for when they pull all the dead Marines out of like Cant, I'd volunteer to carry the bodies off the helicopters and take them in and get them searched, make sure that they were dead. And sometimes we find one alive, they're mutilated or whatever. I mean, I volunteered for it, and I volunteered for when they spray the bodies, because we didn't have we'd run out of body bags. And they're just laying on an airstrip dead, flies beating them up, maggots all over them. I mean, the only thing I could do to respect them, young, good-looking kids, man.
These kids who are willing to die for each other, if they can't die for some overarching principle, they can find a reason to fight and die anyway. God bless them. God love them.
He had a lot of writings about things. He was a poet, so to speak. Not everything rhymed, but he was good about that in his writings and different things. This particular premonition, if you want to call it that, he wrote, obviously before he was killed. It said, "The morn will dawn that fatal day, I'll not be home but far away. In the warm jungle growth, live and green, when they tear through me, angry and mean." And that's, I guess, his premonition of the way he thought he was going to die, and it pretty much came true.
Saw a lot of kids lose their life, 17, 18. They lost their lives there, you know, it's young. See why they wouldn't call it a war. Excuse me. Still hurts. Oh man, it still hurts.
The children, they grow up with holes in their heart that are always there. So it's a terrible thing, war. That's the cost of it is in terms of lives destroyed.
When she saw the dark green car pull up, she knew that it was not good news, that they were coming to knock on the door, and two men in military uniform had came to tell them. And it was horrible for my mother.
Ready. Hey. Fire.
It was horrible for my dad. It was horrible for all of us.
A very close friend of mine, he handed me a picture of a friend of ours. He said, "I don't need this anymore, why don't you take it?" And the next morning he was shot down and killed. His family, knowing that I was coming home soon, asked that I be assigned as the escort officer. And that was tough.
And so I knew my time was ending, within about a week, 10 days, and then on the morning of April 5th, 1972, all hell was breaking loose. And I was prepared to die. I mean, you don't go into combat thinking, I'm going to come home necessarily. Now, I was totally spent, no food, sleep, or water for 2.5, 3 days, and these guys descend upon me, but I felt at peace. My mother, intuitively, on April the 7th, she had a map in her apartment here in Austin, Vietnam. She knew where I was. And on April the 7th, intuitively, she just went over there and crossed off the map.
This was a vicious fight. And the way they treated our prisoners of war, the Army guys, a lot of them didn't ever get to the so-called Hanoi Hilton. They were kept literally in these damn bamboo cages in the jungles of Cambodia and probably Thailand and so on. I mean, talk about brutality. There's no way to describe it.
Think of what you're saying. You can get it wrong and still you think.
They probably remember half a dozen photographs that were on the front pages of the paper. They remember The little naked girl, 9 years old, who had been burned by napalm, running down the road screaming. They probably remember the picture of General Loan, the chief of police of Vietnam, shooting that prisoner in the head on TV.
The Viet Cong simultaneously attacked just about every major city and town in South Vietnam.
You probably remember Walter Cronkite on the evening news saying, "We can't win this war.
This is the CBS Evening News.
It's going the wrong way."
To say that we are closer to victory today is to believe, in the face of the evidence, the optimists who have been wrong in the past.
Our press sold us out.
Not knowing where they are, that's the worst. Right around the running sewers and the gutters anywhere.
Tet of 1968, they hit all at once, and we destroyed them. We destroyed the Viet Cong, we destroyed the NVA, we destroyed their leadership, we destroyed everything that they had. And that's when it went downhill, 1968. 1968, our country turned on itself.
There's too many of you crying.
I was in Vietnam. I was a platoon leader over there. What is this? What the hell is this? We were the ones that got shot. You guys were over there too with your damn cameras.
The press aggravated the situation by recognizing these fools looking like clowns and on drugs.
One of the things that our young people in particular are really good at is compassion. And the number of good deeds that were done that got totally washed out by all of the adverse publicity of the Lieutenant Callies and these kinds of criminals, all those good things are washed away and lost.
The fact is, My Lai was not the norm. It wasn't the normal infantryman. Lieutenant Callie, he was just barely fresh in from the States. After My Lai, soldiers across the board, soldiers, sailors, airmen, everybody that was in Vietnam was considered by these dipshits a baby killer, because there were babies killed in that massacre. There's 50,000 people in this division at that time, and there was only 40 people, 50 people in that massacre. We would come out of the jungle, we would go on transportation to another base. And then in the jungle, we wore it with green and white instead of blue and white, but they would see our patch. And we would hear other soldiers just saying, "There goes some of them baby killers."
Oh yeah, well, and in fact, babies were killed. See, that's the problem. The truth is, babies were killed, and it was in the name of this, quote, war we were fighting. And some of it was done totally and brutally, intentionally. But it was such a very small part of it. Look, one of the people that I dislike to this day is the guy that's the Secretary of State for this country now. He got up and testified before Congress as if every one of us was a baby killer. He made his bones, so to speak, by dissing everybody that served in Vietnam. And he was elected to the House of Representatives because of some of the comments he made. To me, that is the height of hypocrisy and dishonesty.
Jane Fonda, I will never forgive her to this day, because she'd get on there and say, even though she's apologized, but she's not sincere. I go to bed crying every night thinking of the damage we've done to these poor innocent people. She was a puppet, and they showed her exactly what they wanted her to see. There was POWs in North Vietnam that refused to meet with her and were beaten.
If there's anything that destroyed the morale of the United States soldier in Vietnam, it's those people on the streets rioting in this country. For those thousands and thousands of Vietnam veterans who have committed suicide since that time, since that branding baby killer, while that war was going on. I don't blame it on the soldier. I blame it on them assholes that were walking the streets.
I know a lot of the guys hate that idea, hate the demonstrators, hate Jane Fonda. You know, it takes so much emotional energy to hate. I don't hate any of them, they're irrelevant. They were irrelevant back then. They're even more irrelevant now.
No, I really think it was pretty disgraceful that what the country did, and I blame almost the entire country. I blame those who didn't speak up for him, even though they were, I think it was Nixon's words, the silent majority.
Coming home, we got hit by 16 hippies at San Francisco airport. And two of us had to fight our way to the damn cafe. Because we were warmongers and baby killers. And when we got off the plane, I'll tell you how Marines, seasoned Marines, not just Marines, seasoned Marines, not boot Marines, seasoned Marines, had 26 hand grenades in their sea bags on the frickin' plane. That's how afraid they were of their own people when they came home.
And I was running through the airport to catch the plane. It was about 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, and some guy jumped out and spit on me. Fortunately, I wasn't armed.
They just wanted someone to say thank you for your service, and they couldn't get that. They couldn't even talk about what they had seen and done with their own families in a lot of cases. They just had to shut their mouths, take off their uniforms, and no matter how proud they were, pretend they hadn't been there. And in my opinion, that's criminal.
I'm a man in the United States. They told me to go, and I did. I did what they told me to, and then I came home. And all I wanted to do was slide back into civilian life and leave me alone. But they wouldn't let me. Exactly why they decided to call me baby killer and throw bags of feces at me and balloons full of urine and make fun of me, and I don't know. But I'll probably never forgive them.
My father comes home. I knew he'd been off at war, but this was just my prince in shining armor. There's my daddy. And I get told, we're gonna go, and daddy's getting an award. Did I comprehend? Not fully, not at all. And I remember that my mother had to fight the school system there in Temple to allow us to even not be counted absent to go to the White House.
I have for the first time, the privilege of representing the United States of America and presenting the Congressional Medal of Honor.
When President Nixon draped the medal over my father, Father's a very strong man. As I said, he could cut his emotions off, but I could see that his face went white, and he took a breath. And I knew later on that he was thinking, I'm worthy. Those were his thoughts. President Nixon said, what can I do for you? And I'm standing there looking at my father, who I'd never seen be anything but this mountain of a man. And my father said, well, sir, it would mean a lot to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. So we went. And I asked Daddy on the way, I said, what is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers? He explained to me. And even in that picture, I have a sort of smile on my face because I looked at my father and he had a tear in his eye. And I remembered the words my father had just explained to me. And I thought, I understand.
We today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam.
When they signed the Paris Peace Agreement, They came in, took the chains off of us. They brought in all this food that they'd been withholding. My return was a little different than someone that, say, had served, overseas, because we came back under different circumstances. POWs are not heroes, period. The real heroes are the ones that gave their lives on the battlefield all over this world. It's not a POW. Medal of Honor recipients I put in that same category as being heroes because they went above and beyond the call of duty. But those that paid the ultimate sacrifice. But freedom to me, chance to get up every morning that I'm not, oppressed. I'm not forced to eat something I don't like. I can do what I want, go where I want. I mean, it's just amazing because when it's all taken away from you, it really gives you an opportunity to think. Because obviously I had a lot of time to think about the things I took for granted, but I don't anymore.
I stand beside them now while they fight a different kind of battle, trying to get the benefits that this country promised them. There's not a one of us who came back from that war the same person he was when he went. You can't go and witness those horrors and be unchanged. So there's a lot of people who were promised as soldiers and Marines and airmen that they would be taken care of by this country if they fought for this country. And I want to hold the VA's feet to the fire until they live up to the promise.
Agent Orange was a problem for our kids. War Zone C, that jungle had been full of that junk. It's still a problem for some of the guys.
That's affected me today, right now today. I've been through that. I've been through so many tests on this Agent Orange. Nobody can tell us what's going to happen to us 20 more years down the road.
There's a lot of attention now for folks with post-traumatic stress disorder. And finally, people are saying, gosh, it's 40, 50 years after Vietnam, and you know what? We have a bunch of the folks that had those characteristics, that probably had those problems.
It's something that you never forget. It's always there, It's just activated, by words like war, conflict,
But when you get us down and you set us down and you make us talk about the things we did, especially the combat vets, it starts. See, it drags up shit that we don't want to talk about.
3/4 of the times I wake up, my wife used to tell me that she'd wake up, I'd be in the corner, I'd be nude, I'd be sweating, and she couldn't touch me because my eyes were this big and I wasn't back. And she was a wonderful woman right up to the day she died. And I have to say, if it wasn't for her, I probably would have committed suicide.
I believe it was a waste of our country's manpower and lives, and even the lives that weren't taken were ruined.
My mother would speak to me, and she would speak to me like almost whisper, "Are you okay, son?" And I'd look at her and I said, "Mother, I'm fine." I said, "You can talk to me." "Well, I don't know what to say to you because I don't know how you're going to react." I said, "Mom, I'm going to be fine. I'm okay."
While we were treated as outcasts when we came back from Vietnam, what we're doing now is we're treating them with pity. Pity is not the right course of action.
I tried to go to the VA to talk about it. Just made it worse. Because a lot of guys, they'll go over there and they want the sympathy. Well, I don't want to hear that shit either, you know? You don't got it, then get the hell out of it. Quit crying about it.
I always hearken back to a thing that my old friend Captain B.T. Collins, who's gone now, he lost a right leg and a right arm in Vietnam to a grenade blast. And he would talk to veterans groups. He would say this: no whining and no crying. We're the fortunate ones. We survived when so many better men than we are died, laid down their lives all around us so that we might live. We owe them an obligation to live every day to its fullest potential, trying to make this world a better place for our having lived and their having died.
Two dark granite walls that come together, a reflection of a very dark time in America's past. It's not a war memorial, it's a memorial to those who fought and died in Vietnam and the loved ones they left behind. And still they come by the thousands, leaving behind flowers and flags and gifts and notes. America tried hard to forget Vietnam. The question remains, will she remember its warriors? Those who can't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We can't forget Vietnam.
They were fighting in a terrible jungle against a very good enemy. And they acquitted themselves well. 58,000 of them were killed over 10 years' time. What more can you ask of a generation? And I look at them and I say, well, maybe they weren't the greatest generation, but they were sure as hell the greatest of their generation.
I get people seeing me wearing my little beanie hat or wearing my vest saying Vietnam veteran all the time. They come up, thank you for your service. And they need to thank every veteran of every war, not just me because I got Vietnam on my ass. They need to thank every soldier for every war. But their appreciation now is really a favor to themselves, for their own conscience. What I want them to do is walk up to me and say, forgive me for not supporting you. Period.
Just you need to support them a little bit better. Really listen to them. And quit thinking of yourself so damn much. Think about what they did for you.
I would want to say what my father would want me to say. He would want us to respect and actually visualize what these men and women are going through. You know, thank you. Let me shake your hand, appreciate it, and walk off. Actually give a damn about them, because obviously they gave a damn about us. And probably my father, those words would be his words. Show him that we give a damn.